She quickly brushed her hands down the front of her heavy gray wool skirt to remove any wrinkles. She straightened the dainty single pearl that hung around her neck, centering it perfectly between her breasts, which were certainly bound with ace bandages beneath her crisp white shirt. The group of men removed their sunglasses in unison, raised their chins in the air, and inhaled. I could tell they were inhaling because they slapped at their chests and flared their nostrils. It was a familiar gesture. Many of my mother's friends from New York City or Boston did the same thing when they came to Shutesbury. Personally, I could never understand why, because the air was thick with pollen and insects. If one wanted fresh air, why not just open the door to the clothes dryer and stick your face in there? One of the men approached the school, came right up to the window, and knocked on the wood next to the glass. "It's real, all right," he called back to his associates. A moment later, Mrs. Ames joined the men outside and, to my horror, smiled. I'd never seen Mrs. Ames smile before, and the thought had never occurred to me that such an act was even possible for her. But there it was, her mouth open in the white daylight, her teeth exposed. One of the men stepped forward, removed his sunglasses, and said something to her. She touched her hair with her hand and laughed. Kimberly Plume, who liked to insert marbles into her vagina at recess, said, "Gross!" Her lips frowned in disgust. I, myself, was horrified to see Mrs. Ames laugh, and then blush. To see her in such a state of obvious bliss was unbearable. I had to look away. Eventually, Mrs. Ames walked back into the room, and I watched her legs, all plump and plastic-looking through her support hose. She wore high heels of an unfashionable style that made a sharp, angry sclack against the tile floor when she walked. She was kind only to the girls, and by kind, I mean she was not mean. She was punishing to the boys, even the prissy, girly boys like me. But for once, she had something to say that interested me. "Children, children, may I have your attention, please?" She clapped her hands together quickly, smack, 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 smack. But this was unnecessary, because she already had our full attention. We'd been sitting there waiting for her, not daring to breathe, lest we disturb the balance of the universe, causing her to fall and die and then not be able to tell us why the men had come to our school. Or worse, somehow cause the men to simply drive away. "We have some very special surprise guests here today." She looked to the door and nodded, and the men entered the room. "Hi, kids," they said. "Hi there, everyone." It was thrilling to hear them speak in their deep baritone voices, and to see, up close, the dark razor stubble that shadowed their chins. At the same time, an exotic aroma entered the room, one that made me feel lightheaded and flushed, like I'd been on a pogo stick. Only as an adult would I be able to name this intoxicating scent. English leather. Mrs. Ames continued, "These men are from New York City, and I hope you all know where New York City is, because we have studied our geography quite a bit this year. Does everyone know where New York City is?" We nodded yes, but we thought, "What's the matter with you, crazy old witch? Why is your face so red?" Although it alarmed me to recognize that my own face was red as well, it was something about the presence of the men that made Mrs. Ames and me turn red and become hot. The fact that we had this in common made me wonder what was wrong with me. "Good. Well, then, these men are here to make a television commercial." Here, I almost peed. She might as well have told me that as of today, I never had to come to school ever again, and for that matter was free to hit anybody I wanted to without being punished. I lived for television commercials. The only reason I watched TV was so that I could see the commercials. Fabergé Organics shampoo, I told two friends and they told two friends, and so on and so on and so on, or my current favorite, "Gee, your hair smells terrific." I was also fond of the commercial with the dog chasing the chuck wagon beneath the kitchen sink. "It makes its own rich gravy." I watched one of the men scan the faces in the room. Occasionally he would jab his friend on the shoulder and nod in the direction of one of the students. As I was watching him, he caught my eye and smiled. I thought he was a very friendly man, very nice. I admired his crisp dark suit, white shirt, and black tie. His hair was thick and glossy, combed back. I smiled at him. He nudged his friend and nodded in my direction, and then the other man looked at me. He smiled too. I wanted to jump up out of my seat and run to the men, hugging them around the legs. I wanted to lick the hair on their wrists. Mrs. Ames announced to the class, "These men would like to use our schoolhouse in a commercial for their special beverage. It's called Tang. Do any of you know Tang?" There were gasps in the room. Of course we knew Tang, the orange, crystalline powder that the astronauts brought with them to outer space. I loved Tang, and would sometimes eat it by the teaspoon, straight from the jar. I loved the green label, the orange lid, the way the lid was extra wide and easy to unscrew. I even liked the paper eardrum that was over the mouth of the lid when you first opened the jar. You had to puncture the eardrum with a spoon, and printed on top was Tang, Tang, Tang. My mother despised Tang. "I've just made this fresh tangerine juice and put it into this nice clay pitcher I bought at the Leverett Arts Center, and you want that god-awful artificial junk." She did like cinnamon dynamints, though. Mrs. Ames told us that the men from the van wanted to use some of us in their commercial. "Not all of you now, only some of you. They're going to have to choose." Instantly, the students began raising their hands, except for me. Some voice inside me said, "Don't do it. It's beneath you." Instead, I sat politely at my desk with my hands clasped firmly together. I was very pleased that I'd thought to wear my 14-karat gold electroplated ID bracelet that day. One thing was certain. I would be in their Tang commercial, and if any of the other children tried to get in my way, I would use my pencil to blind them. So these men would like to separate everybody into groups and then ask each group a few questions. Chaos erupted as the kids began to screech with excitement. Desks were shoved back, chairs knocked over. Mrs. Ames tried to gain control of her students by slapping her ruler against the edge of her globe. "Now, now, now, silence! Stop this, children! Come to attention at once!" Reluctantly, the class came to attention, facing the flag and placing their hands over their hearts, ready to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. "No, not that," she said. "Just stand still and be silent." Eventually, we were split up into groups of 3. Then, group by group, the men met with the kids. I stared hatefully at the back of Lisa Tucker's fat head. I was trying to determine where the odor she emitted was coming from. A hole? Some sort of vent for her brain? I hated Lisa, and so did everyone else. She smelled like feet and something worse, something spoiled and eggy. And she was mean. She was a strong girl who pushed the boys around. Her older brother, Tommy, was one of the big kids who went to the new school down the street. Once he hit me so hard he knocked the wind out of me. I wished that Lisa and Tommy would go swimming in the ocean and be eaten by jaws. Surely the men would know not to cast her in their commercial. When it was finally my turn, the men were tired, as evidenced by their loosened ties and the large wet spots that spread from under their arms. They'd spoken to all 30 kids and had notes splayed out on the table in front of them. They looked funny sitting in our small chairs, which had never seemed small before. The man who had first smiled at me said, "Hi, guys. So, do any of you want to be in a commercial?" He looked at me when he said this, and I got the feeling that he had already chosen me. His eyes said, "You are special and better than all the other children, and I would like you to come live with me in my blue eyes in a city far away from here." His eyes said, "I will save you." We all nodded our heads yes. "Good, then. Good. So what I want to do is I want to see if you can laugh, okay? I'm going to tell you a joke, and I just want to see what you sound like when you laugh. Ready?" The other children nodded, I thought like puppets. I smiled and winked at him, like I'd seen people do on TV. He winked back and nudged the man on his left. "Okay," he said. Then he raised his voice and made a comical face. "Your mother wears army boots." Neither of the other kids laughed. I tossed my head back in an explosion of delight and laughed so hard I was able to bring